Hi Kate, nice to see you again. So I know last week we talked about what's going on for you at the moment, the symptoms you're experiencing, a bit of a history in the background in the lead up to this. And we also talked about what you wanted to get out of treatment. So I know you said that you'd like to not experience panic attacks, and we talked about maybe a more realistic goal of being able to cope with them a little bit better and understanding why they're happening for you. So what I thought we might do today is have a chat a little bit more about kind of what's happening in the here and now, so how your symptoms are related to each other and how they're connected, and what's keeping you stuck in this problem at the moment. And hopefully that'll give us a good sense of what we're actually going to work on in treatment and what strategies we're going to use to help you cope with these panic attacks a little bit better. How does that sound?
Sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So because you're coming in for panic attacks, let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
What's your understanding of what a panic attack is?
I just get really, really, really anxious, and I just get all this stuff happens in my body, like I get all these sort of symptoms and just, panic heaps.
Yeah. So we get those emotional experiences of really anxious, panicky, like you said, and all those physical symptoms as well. And so that's really what we're looking at. So we might put this up on the whiteboard. So if we're looking at our physical symptoms, what are the ones that you really notice?
My heart races.
Yeah.
I find it really hard to breathe. Kind of get that feeling in my chest, like that kind of tight feeling in my chest. I just feel like I'm going to faint.
Yeah. And so when you say you might faint, what is it that cues you into that you might faint?
I feel really dizzy.
Yeah.
Dizzy, lightheaded,
Yeah, and so those are all really common physical experiences that we have when we have a panic attack. Have you heard of the word fight or flight response before?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Do you know why we have that, or what's your understanding of what the fight or flight response is?
It's kind of like that system that's meant to protect us, like for us to either fight with someone or kind of run away.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about a panic attack, it really is just an intense rush or surge of the same symptoms that we get from the fear response, and that is that emotional fear, anxiety, panic kind of emotions. And then we get the physical symptoms. So our heart racing, we have trouble breathing, our chest might feel really tight, we might feel really dizzy, lightheaded, that kind of thing. So when we're having those physical symptoms, that is the fight or flight response kicking in. And like you said, it is designed to protect us. So the fear response that we have tends to happen when we perceive that there's a kind of threat. So we might just have a look at this on the whiteboard in more detail, if that's okay. So this is the regular fear response that we all have. So this isn't about people who have panic attacks or panic disorder or not. This is what we all experience. When something in our environment triggers us to think that we're somehow in danger. So that trigger might be an external trigger, so something in our environment that we see or hear or sense. It might be an internal trigger, so something that we feel, a physical sensation. It might be a thought or a feeling that we notice. But what happens is that then tells us that we're under threat. So there's some kind of danger to ourselves, to our well-being. And the really key thing here is that the threat is perceived. So we know that if there's an actual threat, if there's actually danger, the fight or flight response is that protective response. So, we talk a lot about the caveman finding the saber-toothed tigers. Those processes still happen for us now. So it might be probably a better example might be something like if you're walking down a dimly lit street and if someone came along and kind of grabbed you or looked like they were going to mug you, the fight or flight response would kick in, because in this situation, we've been in an environment, someone's coming toward us, that's triggered our perception of danger to ourselves and our well-being. And we might feel anxious, it might be panicked in that situation, and certainly we get the fear. And those are the emotions that we have. And so in this situation, we kick into this fight or flight response. And this is designed to help us manage that situation. So if you were going to have someone who came up to you and you were going to fight them off, what kinds of things do you think you'd need to do?
sort of hit them. And
Yeah. And if you're going to hit them, if you're going to be hitting them as hard as you possibly can, so look after yourself, what kinds of physical changes might support that?
Kind of adrenaline, I guess. Yeah.
So we get that big adrenaline rush. We also get things like our blood gets redistributed in our bodies, so it moves away from the kind of digestive systems that aren't really helping us protect ourselves at the moment, moves to our muscles so that we will be able to take those big swings. So we might need to run if we're going to run away, the flight side of it. We also get things like our heart rate goes up. We feel our heart racing because it's pumping that blood around faster. It's trying to get that blood to where it needs to go. How do you think other sensations might tie into that fight or flight response? Can you think of any?
I mean, I guess the breathing would be related to that. What's going on with your heart and everything? Yeah,
absolutely. So obviously, if we are going to be fighting or running for our lives, we're going to need to keep our oxygen up, and also the metabolic processes involved in kind of doing that in physical movement produces a lot of carbon dioxide, and so we need to actually expel that out as well. So we're going to find that our breathing rate increases, and we're breathing as hard and as fast as we can to keep those levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide where we need them to be. So then we might actually feel the strain of that tightness in our chest as the muscles are working really hard to breathe in and out as fast as we can. What about this dizziness? How do you think that might relate?
Does that kind of happen when you're breathing really quickly?
It does, yeah. So what we know is that, especially if we're breathing out a lot of carbon dioxide and we're not actually having to fight or flight, so if we're not having to fight someone off, if we're just walking down a dimly street and we're perceiving that we're under a threat, we're going to have all of these same symptoms and all the same physical responses. So we're going to be breathing at that faster rate, but we're not actually producing all that extra carbon dioxide. So our carbon dioxide levels will actually get a little bit out of whack. And that one of the side effects of that is that we might feel really dizzy and lightheaded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So all of the physical symptoms that we notice are a result of that fight or flight response that we're getting. If we were actually fighting off an attacker in the street, do you think you're going to be paying attention to your physical symptoms?
No, not at all.
Right. Where is your attention going to be?
On them and on what's actually going on.
Yeah. So that's the other thing that happens when we have this fight or flight response, is that our attention gets drawn to the threat. And which, again, is a really helpful kind of way to manage a threat to our well-being, is that all of our senses are based on what can I see, what can I perceive, how do I respond, because it helps us manage that imminent danger. So our attention becomes on the threat. So it might be on what we can kind of see in the environment. It also will start scanning for more sources of threat, because it's trying to help us manage that situation. So we have that real threat focus on our attention. So all of this is really, really helpful when we're in a situation where there is actual threat. And we're also going to experience this same fear response when we perceive threat. Okay. How do you think panic attacks fit into this process for you?
I mean, that's what happens when I feel anxious.
Yeah. So do you often experience the panic attacks in situations where you're feeling quite anxious or afraid?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, but a lot of the time it's like that.
Okay, yeah. So let's have a look at both of those. So what we know is that when you have an expected panic attack, so that's a situation where you know you might feel anxious, or you can kind of identify that there's some concern that you have. You might, if it's a low level of anxiety and panic, you might just have a few of these symptoms. But we're all going to have a different threshold at which the body initiates that sudden fear response that is the same experience as a panic attack. So the really sudden, intense rush of adrenaline, and we get all of these coming on really quickly. There can be a whole bunch of reasons for that. So it might be genetics and biology, all sorts of things. Personality can also play in, previous experience as well. So if we've had dangerous experiences before, the body realises it actually needs to do that a bit earlier and a bit more. So we're going to have a slightly different threshold for where a panic attack will actually start in a perceived situation where we're under threat. Tell me about your first panic attack. When did that happen? Was that an expected panic attack or an unexpected one?
No, it was actually really unexpected. Yeah,
okay.
It was. I think I was walking into my accountant's office, and it just came on out of the blue.
Okay. So that would be what we would call an unexpected panic attack. But often we can actually kind of figure out what was going on that might have triggered that in the first place. What else was going on for you at that time?
Just kind of in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty stressed, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I was, I had a lot of exams coming up, but
Okay.
kind of a lot on my plate.
Yeah, so you're quite busy, quite stressed.
Yeah.
Often that will happen, especially for those first couple of panic attacks that people have when they are unexpected,
Yeah.
is that we know that when there's an increased level of stress in general in our lives, it makes a panic attack more likely. And we almost think it kind of, if we have a threshold that's here, kind of gets us halfway there without anything in particular happening in that situation.
Yeah.
So perhaps in that situation for you, you had this underlying level of stress. And then it doesn't actually take much for us to then be tipped over into that fear response being triggered. And it might be something as simple as you walked into the accountant's office and thought, oh, I hope that I can get the money back from this tax return, because if I can't, that would be really difficult for me financially, that kind of thing. So it might not be a significant threat that we perceive, but it's something that is maybe a threat to our well-being, or just another thing that we might have to think about that kind of puts us at a little bit of risk.
Mm-hmm.
So we might have that underlying stress level, and then that just tips us over into those panic attacks. Once you had that panic attack, tell me about the experience of it. What did it feel like?
I felt like I was, going to pass out in front of everybody. It was really, really scary. I just felt like, my body was kind of shutting down.
Yeah, so kind of, I'll pop those here. So felt like you were going to pass out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite scary.
Yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah. And you said other people were kind of around, like there was other people
Yeah,
there?
everyone was around and just staring at me.
Yeah.
Like, this crazy lady.
Yeah, okay. It's this kind of sense of I might be looking really crazy, other people might be kind of judging me as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll just pop these down here. I might be worried about judgment from others. And given that it was an unexpected panic attack, I imagine there was some kind of concern about what's happening to me and why am I experiencing these symptoms as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought something must be wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like I was, dying or something.
Yeah. And that's a really common concern, especially when people have a panic attack that's unexpected, that they think there is something physically wrong, they might be dying, have a heart attack. So these experiences often will help us actually understand why it's still a problem for you at the moment. Because if you can think about, if you had this kind of fear response, you've got these physical symptoms, but then you were able to kind of just let them subside, because we know that they will kind of fade away over time, and you didn't think too much more about them. Would they be affecting you, do you think, if you weren't too bothered?
No, probably not if I wasn't bothered.
Yeah. But what happens is when we have a really negative experience of them and we kind of get quite concerned that they might mean that there's something wrong, we almost then set it up so that this becomes another threat.
Yeah.
So that the fear response itself that's been triggered is kind of like a false alarm. So the alarm's been triggered, whether it's there's a danger. We often talk about it a bit like a house alarm. So it might be that someone is breaking into a house, but it might actually be that a fly just walked across the screen. Okay, so it's been triggered, but we actually see that panic attack and that fear response as something dangerous in and of itself. And if we're going to respond in the moment, you might notice you start having some of those symptoms and you respond kind of worrying about them. So you might start having some of these thoughts, and that makes you feel more anxious. So we end up having a bit of a cycle here. So we have our fight or flight response. We have what we might kind of call maybe catastrophic interpretation. So we're kind of thinking the worst of what we're experiencing, because it is really awful, and we think it something might be wrong. Other people are going to judge me. I might look crazy. I might actually hurt myself. I might pass out. We feel more anxious. And then what happens to our physical symptoms of anxiety?
They increase.
Yeah. And sometimes they can increase quite suddenly. We kind of get that really big rush all of a sudden. And so we kind of get stuck in this cycle of then having more physical symptoms of anxiety, and keeps us really afraid of them.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense for you in terms of your experience of panic attacks?
Yeah, it fits really well.
Yeah. And so like we kind of said, that sometimes they can be triggered or expected in situations where we can identify what the threat is. Sometimes they happen in unexpected situations. And you said you are experiencing more of those now. If we kind of put it in perspective of if we're looking for panic attacks because they are something that we think is a threat, what kinds of things might trigger that thought that I might be having a panic attack?
I mean, anytime I feel any of those things physically.
Yeah. So we've also got this sense of if our attention's on the threat, we might actually start scanning for those physical sensations to check out if we're going to have a panic attack. So this attention here becomes, I'm going to look for signs that I'm actually going to start having a panic attack. So we start scanning our body, looking for things that might change. What we know as well that happens is that when we are doing this, we are more sensitive to small changes that might happen in our body. So what kind of symptoms do you scan for when you're looking to see if you might be having a panic attack?
Probably my breathing.
Breathing?
Yeah.
And what kind of changes are you looking for in your breathing?
Like if I feel like I'm not getting enough air, so sort of that like deeper breathing or faster breathing, any kind of loud breathing, pretty much any change really.
Okay. Louder and deeper as well. So faster, louder, deeper breathing, any kind of changes in your breathing rate, that will kind of trigger you to kind of think I might be having a panic attack. Yeah. So we might even put that up here as an example, if we can. So that's our kind of perceived threat in this case. So we've noticed that my breathing is changing and I think I might have a panic attack. And so from there, we can really easily kind of slide into this cycle of feeling anxious about it, which is going to cause some physical changes, including changes to our breathing, quite possibly. And then we're going to activate all of these catastrophic interpretations. Yeah. What about any external triggers that you might be scanning for or look out for?
Just kind of noises, like anyone around, like if someone's like feels like someone's following me or walking too close.
Okay. So people being around. And what is it that you're concerned about with people being around?
Either that they're kind of like looking at me, judging me, they're going to attack me.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's anywhere where you might actually be in danger, but also kind of that social danger. So now we're in this cycle where you've got an idea of the things that might trigger panic attacks, both those internal situations and the external situations, and you're really scanning for those. When they occur and we have this prediction that you're going to have a panic attack, what do you do then to prevent that from happening? Because it's not a nice thing to have, is it, a panic attack?
No, it's not.
Yeah. So what are the things that you do or don't do?
I try to leave
as
soon as possible. I try to get out of there or try to just get to a space on my own, like into a different room, away from everybody. Yeah, just try to escape really.
Okay. I like that word, escape. So we have that urge to kind of leave or escape as much as we can. You said it's kind of getting away from other people, so by yourself.
Yeah.
So kind of by yourself, so that people can't judge you.
Yeah, so no one can see me. Yeah.
If you do have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Okay. What other things do you avoid or not do to stop yourself from having a panic attack?
I mean, I won't exercise very much, but just in case that kind of, like everything sort of escalates and I'm, in a park or something going for a run and suddenly, look like I'm going crazy.
Yeah. And is that because you think that something might actually go wrong that then would trigger a panic attack, or is it because of the physical sensations associated with exercising?
Probably a bit of both.
A bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So avoid changes to your heart rate and your breathing. And also those kind of social situations. So we might also avoid external triggers. And how do you feel when you think that you might have a panic attack and you get out of there?
Well, relieved.
Yeah. So we kind of get that short-term relief of the anxiety goes down, I've avoided having a panic attack, I'm feeling much better. Did you always avoid these things from when you had your first panic attack?
Yeah, since I started having panic attacks, yeah.
Okay. And what impact has that had on your ability to function and go about your day-to-day activities?
I mean, I kind of change desks at work, and like sometimes I won't go in.
Yeah.
I don't see my friends as much because, like, if it's something that I can't really predict, I don't really want to go. Like, if they're going to the movies or something like that, I don't really know where we're going to sit. I don't know if I'm going to be able to leave. I won't go anywhere new. So, yeah, I guess it makes it a bit hard.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's had a really big impact on your ability to kind of participate in things that you enjoy and maybe even get your day-to-day activities done, your responsibilities like going into work. Yeah. Often we find that with that avoidance, we're trying to help ourselves in the short term, and it works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But in the long term, there's some really big consequences for us and our ability to kind of function and go about our day-to-day lives. What about the impact it has on your panic attacks themselves? When we're kind of having to stay home and not do things as much as we used to, we feel better in the short term. But I'm interested in the impact it has in the long term on your sense of your ability to cope and function.
Well, I guess I have them less,
Yeah.
so I don't really know how I would cope. I don't really know how I can cope with them.
Yeah. So we kind of actually don't have a sense of if I could cope or not, because I actually haven't given myself the chance to find that out. Yeah. And that's really common when we have panic and we avoid it, is that it feels really good just kind of in the short term, but in the long term it actually maintains our fear. And it maintains the catastrophic interpretations that we have, because we never actually get to find out if we do go crazy, or if other people do judge us, or if something is wrong if I do pass out, because we're just not doing it. If you think about, a good example can be if you had a phobia of dogs, and you could put a lot of effort in to go about your day-to-day life and avoid ever meeting a dog again and ever having to come across one. But it also never gives us the opportunity to find out that some dogs might be kind of big and scary and jumpy, but other dogs are kind of little and friendly and fluffy and cute. It's kind of the same approach that we take to panic attacks, is that we never actually get to find out what panic attacks are like and if we can actually cope with them, because we're spending so much time and energy avoiding them or getting the heck out of there if we think that one might come on. Does that make sense with what we've got up there? Does it kind of match in with what your experience is?
Yeah, I think it fits really well, actually, yeah.
Okay. So if you can think about maybe a recent panic attack that you had, I don't know when the last one was that you had.
Probably last week,
Last week, yeah. Can you identify whether it was something triggered it or whether it came on out of the blue?
It's pretty out of the blue,
Out of the blue, yeah.
So.
Yeah. So what was the first thing that you noticed when that panic attack started?
I noticed my breathing.
Your breathing?
Yeah. I noticed that I was breathing kind of like a bit more deeply, like I felt like I was running out of air, so I had to keep taking big breaths.
Okay. So that's a really good example of how it might start. So because we are so sensitive and tuned into the things that might go wrong and things that might indicate that you're going to have a panic attack, we might actually end up interpreting just our regular body sensations and changes that kind of happen over the day as a trigger, because it kind of becomes a really, really sensitive trigger, almost on a hair trigger. So you might have kind of tuned into changes that happened in your breathing, but changes that might have otherwise been pretty benign. But then what happens is we've activated this kind of process. So we think, I might have a panic attack, we start feeling anxious, we get more symptoms, we interpret them as the catastrophe that I feel I might pass out, I might faint, I might look crazy, something's going to be wrong with me. And then that actually causes and kind of cycles into the panic attack. So sometimes it might actually be a benign trigger. Sometimes we might then attribute that to the start of the panic attack. So you might have thought, oh, the breathing was the start of the panic attack, but it might have actually been the case that that was just a regular body change, that then our interpretations and the way we responded to it actually became a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy and created it into a panic attack.
Yeah, wow.
How does that sit with you in terms of understanding why you have this?
It makes sense. I'd never thought that it could be the way that I think about it, that is the thing that kind of results in the panic attack.
Yeah. So it's not something that we're always doing deliberately, but certainly at the moment your brain is operating on this idea that these panic attacks are really, really bad, we have these catastrophic interpretations. Your attention is really focused on scanning for any sign, so you're going to pick up on any little kind of change that indicates that. And then the way that we're responding to that, our behaviours are then acting in a way that maintains that fear and keeps us stuck, even though it feels really good in the short term.
Yeah.
So now we can have a look at what we're actually going to do about these panic attacks.